right, good morning, everyone. Ricardo Wilkins here, joined by Stacy and Nash, and we are the Cute Team. We are champions using Teams effectively, here to geek out on Teams every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, and happy to do so. We're going to just jump in, and people are coming in. I need to open up the lobby. But while we do, put questions in the chat. I think someone's typing something right now, and we'll kind of start to address that. This is your time for us to, while we certainly always love talking, we're here to really answer your questions. It's an office hour, so happy to do that. So while I'm opening the lobby, I think there's a couple questions in chat from Jim. Do we, Stacy or Nash, do we know that answer?
Cascade a channel
Yes.
from one team to another. Hit it.
Yes,
Nash.
we know the answer. So you can't take everything from a channel and just change it to be part of another team. It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. The individual tabs you have within a channel, those might be things that are really easy to move, like the files. Those are stored in SharePoint. So moving them from one SharePoint library to another, not the end of the world to do. Taking a form.
Let me just repeat the question for the sake of the video. It was about cascading a channel from one team to another, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there are other things that are really hard to move, like the channel conversations, right? Those behind the scenes, living in the Teams messaging substrate and being surfaced through the group mailbox. We don't have a direct way to go and move those from one channel to another or one team to another. There are some third-party tools that purport to be able to do this. I've never actually worked with them. I don't know if they work in GCC environments. So by and large, the answer is no, you can't move everything. And the solution we have is, hey, if we do have a channel that we would rather that people communicate over in this other channel, take that channel and make it essentially read-only by taking the channel conversation and turning on moderation, right? Put one last post in there saying, hey, instead of communicating here, communicate over there, give them a link to click on to kind of shut the conversation down, but leave the old stuff there for people to find and reference. And then whatever you can move from the other tabs, just go ahead and move on over. Most of the other things like files or a form or a OneNote notebook, those are things that can be moved to another location. Jim's second question was, or statement was letting us know that Praise showed up in their environment. Awesome. Praise is rolling out to GCC tenants, and what I heard was that they were hoping to be done with all GCC tenants by the end of the week. I'm not sure if we've heard if they're done yet, but I'm glad to hear that it is on its way out and showing up for folks. Praise is one of those apps that's exists to help improve employee engagement and employee culture, making it easy to call other people out for doing great work.
That's also an interesting app. That those kind of apps in general, I think, are even more significant these days, right? I mean, in terms of, we talk about engagement, and so many of us are remote. It is important to have those kind of apps that lets us have that connection and share our successes with each other. Where normally I would walk down the hall to your cube and pat you on the back, and I can't do that now. So it's good stuff.
Jim's wondering if somebody would demonstrate Praise briefly. Stacy or Ricardo, you got a demo tenant up to show the GCC experience?
Yep, that's what I was just looking off to the screen for, because I wanted to make sure I could queue it up. Let's see, I'm going to share my screen in my GCC tenant. Okay. So you've landed here in my GCC tenant, and let's say from chat that I want to trigger a praise card to be sent to Johanna. So in the chat context here, I'm going to go down to the type a new message, but I'm actually not going to type it. I'm going to choose the little praise icon that you should see now in your, well, let me say it needs to be allowed in your environment. If it is allowed as a managed app for your tenant. Jim, if you're already seeing it, they must be allowing all Microsoft apps. Then you'll have that little icon once it rolls out to your tenant. Praise gives you some pre-configured icons here that you can lean into to use to give that praise type that is appropriate for whatever you're going to thank someone for or recognize them for. Because Johanna is my favorite fake persona in my GCC demo, I'm going to send her an awesome praise. So in the to field, I'm just going to confirm that I want this to go to Johanna. And then I can add my note. And this is free form, so I can make it as full as I want, or I can just make it a targeted thank you for what you did in our meeting. It doesn't have to be a huge expression. They're going to get that badge, that little icon that comes through praise. So it's a short process, which I love, because when we want to recognize the work of someone, if this was a lengthy process, we may be less apt to do it through Teams. Now we have this quick, easy way to do that. So let's just say, you're awesome. And then I'm going to preview it so you guys can check it out. You can see what others are going to see. So this is how it's going to land to Johanna. And when I click send, and I will have to, it shows me the card here in our chat. And I'm going to change my persona in just a second. Let me stop sharing this. And I will log in as Johanna. And you can see it from the recipient side too.
I will say that if you were chatting with me, you would probably use that praise button all the time, just constantly, repeatedly. And so there is a pin feature for praise to pin it to your to the bottom of your chat. So just keep it in mind.
Oh, that's cool. Very good tip. Okay, so let me go through Johanna's activity here. So I see that I was mentioned, or that Johanna was mentioned. So it shows up in my activity feed, and I can click on chat as well and see that Johanna got praise. So when I click that message, actually it was already up. You can see the icon that I chose. You can see that it's calling out her name in big bold letters, and then any of the text that I wanted to have included in that to call out specifically what I was thanking her for would appear underneath the icon there. So it's very easy to issue that out and make sure you're recognizing the good work of your team.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Well, should we flip on over to the third-party app story?
Yeah, I will say for the recording, there's some lively chat going on that unfortunately the recording isn't seeing. So for those that are watching on demand, this might be a little nudge for you to join us live, because all the cool kids are chatting behind the scenes and you're missing that part. So, but yeah, go ahead. Oops, I think we might have lost Nash just as he was about to speak. Oh, there we go. Nash, you still there?
I got a little click happy, hit that big red button.
So yeah, feel free to talk about some third-party app stuff.
Yeah, so we had some other questions the other day that prompted some conversation between Ricardo, Stacy, and I about the third-party apps and Teams that get used the most often, both in government organizations and outside government organizations. And there's some key things that we see in the orgs that use Teams as a platform all of the time that we don't necessarily see in the places that don't. So I'm going to just share my screen out here real quick and talk through this one slide again, right? The whole reason Teams exists, right, is to be that central hub for all of your teamwork, the way you communicate and collaborate with other people in your organization, to bring it together in the context of that collaboration. The three big pillars of that is how you collaborate and communicate. So think email and meetings. completely reimagining the way we did email and meetings in the past, right? Where the idea of an email thread with 500 people on it or 50 people on it or even 10 people on it being replaced with a channel conversation. Yeah, that works a bazillion times better. And being able to scale up or scale down a conversation from a one-line chat to a group chat to a call to a meeting and all the way back down. It just works so much better for almost all of the things we used to use email for. And then meetings, realizing that effective meetings weren't effective just because of the meeting itself. The most important differentiator between an effective and an ineffective meeting is what happens before the meeting and after the meeting. So Teams meetings having that life cycle to them, incredibly important. Big pillar number one, communicate and collaborate. Different than we used to do it before and leading to much better results. The second pillar being when we're collaborating with each other, we build a lot of stuff. There's content that gets generated, lots of files, whether it's documents, reports, spreadsheets, you name it. Pulling that stuff together in the context of our collaborations. That I'm working on the emergency communications group. Yeah, our standard operating procedures, our forms, our templates, our training videos. Where do you find those? Oh, it's in the team for our emergency operations group. All of that stuff gets brought together into the context of our collaboration rather than being scattered in this SharePoint site, this shared drive, this database system. They could literally be there, but we're going to experience them inside of the context of the team. That's our hub for that. The third pillar, what we're going to talk about now, though, is that we use lots of tools to get our job done. Making sure that those tools are brought into the context of our collaboration makes a lot of sense. And we see organizations that are really focused on adopting teams for digital transformation in business areas. This becomes a really important one, right? The business area uses things other than Teams and Microsoft 365 to get their job done. All of them do, right? How do we make sure that those other tools are available to them in the context of their collaboration rather than having to switch context over and over and over again? And when we were doing our little conversation, heck, why don't I just go find the OneNote notebook that we threw those into, do as we say and as we do. We pulled up a list of the most popular third-party apps. I swear we did. It's here somewhere.
It is in there on that.
Third-party apps, Nash. There we go. It's right there. And like these were ones I was just going to kind of quick talk through. Like I don't want to take the rest of the half hour here. And I didn't put the actual numbers in here, but this is roughly in the order that they appear when we look at like number of people using them in the context of Teams. And these are all third-party apps that, not all, but many of them are probably things that your organization already uses today outside of the context of Teams. Meaning we're not talking about, hey, we need to go buy something, we need to go run through something through the security, audit, compliance, yada, yada, yada. No, these are things that have already been through that, or the way we use them doesn't need it or something like that. I reordered it a little bit because Jira is normally way higher on the list, but we'll explain that in a second. But just this quick list here are all things that you would interact with in your team, either as a tab to surface really important contact, or sometimes in the context of like a chat extension or a meeting extension. But some of this is pretty, I'm going to imagine that you're going to see this and be like, oh yeah, we use those things already. The YouTube app inside of Teams is one of the most popular third-party apps. If you're already using YouTube to surface video content for your people, great, bring it into the context of Teams using that third-party app. Adobe Acrobat, I can tell you Microsoft uses this. And yeah, what we used to use it for, like where every PDF needed to be Adobe Acrobat Reader, that isn't really the case anymore. But for those advanced scenarios like fillable forms and some of those workflows, people use Adobe Acrobat all the time. If your organization's already using Adobe Acrobat Pro products, bring it into the context of the team. Those folks who are living in that half of their day and Teams the other half of the day, don't make them switch context anymore. The Adobe Creative Cloud apps, less broad of a use case in government, but you probably have communicators out there in your organizations that are leveraging the Adobe Creative Cloud. This is one of the most popular ones worldwide, but it's still one of the most popular ones in state and local government too, because there are a lot of folks who are using the various Adobe Creative Cloud apps. And I guarantee they're not doing it by themselves. They're doing it as part of their work for a group, and it makes real good sense to have as part of a team. Both Adobe Sign and DocuSign are way up there in the list. You probably have things that need electronic signatures that are used all over your organization, and you're probably using one, if not both of these things. If you've got a state level government, you'll probably see business areas A, B, and C on Adobe Sign and X, Y, and Z on DocuSign. Great. Pre-built apps already in the store, just allow them, let those people use those tools in the context of their collaboration. Today, Adobe Sign directly integrates with the Approvals app inside of Teams, so that they don't have to compete. Like Approvals is the Teams Approvals app is designed for really basic scenarios. If you've got a complicated one, just use your existing Adobe Sign stuff for that. Bring it in and use it through Approvals. DocuSign has plans to do that in the future as well. Maps. When I worked for state government, I worked for Department of Transportation in Minnesota and Department of Human Services, and the map makers at both organizations were amazing. Geographical information systems help teams decide how they're going to use resources, help them understand trends with their their citizens that they're working with. You probably have lots of different parts in your organization that are using ArcGIS maps for things like incident response, for citizen planning, for all sorts of stuff. The ArcGIS Maps app is free, whether you're using Esri products or not. You may have folks who don't have their own map maker, but they're consuming maps from a different county or state or the federal government. Great, they can use this app to go and consume those maps in the context of their team. These are, 6 real big ones. Jira and the rest of that mostly are more on the developer side. So Jira, HipChat, Bitbucket, Atlassian as a company has done a really good job of integrating directly into Teams. Like as we look at the top 20 most popular apps, I think like 5 of them are made by Jira. Great, they've done some really great work building integrations that are actually useful for people. Love it. And the rest of these, you're probably familiar with. Poly is often used for polling. Smartsheets is used for data visualization, forms. SurveyMonkey for more of the enterprise polling analytics. GitHub for code management, development management, all that kind of stuff. And then Wikipedia search. I have no idea why this is quite as popular as it is. You wouldn't think it would be all that needed, and yet it gets used all the time. And I asked one of my customers this, and they're like, it's because you're from IT. IT doesn't need it all the time, but business areas, they look up encyclopedic information and stats, and oftentimes the best data happens to be curated and out on Wikipedia today. Yeah, if you went to college a decade ago, your professors were like, never ever use Wikipedia. Now college professors are like, go to Wikipedia, just make sure you go and use the source that they used as your original piece, because it is a great place to go and do research. And yeah, it's used all over the place for people to make it easy for them to go and surface information. This is a long list of apps. It's just the tip of the iceberg, and I picked things that are probably, that are at the top. These are all in the top 20 most popular, and they're probably being used in your enterprise outside of Teams today. Getting these things available for your employees takes very little effort. We have the manage apps pane where you could have them be allowed or blocked at an org-wide level. And then we have permission policies where we do have the global permission policy that controls the Microsoft apps. Then there's a little confusion here too. Forgive our user interface designers. And then third-party apps. Well, third-party apps means things from the Teams App Store. And there are some Microsoft apps in the Teams App Store, like the GitHub Enterprise one. So if that ends up feeling confusing to you, we get it. Just realize that the Microsoft apps are the ones built and managed by the Teams product group directly. These ones are built by someone else at Microsoft that, rather than going through the Teams product group, did just like the folks at Atlassian did. They submitted it to the store and got it approved, which is fine. They can do that. So lots of great things here, where most organizations probably allow all the Microsoft apps. So if you see the Praise app today, that's maintained by the Teams product group. It would just come through there. But the third-party app stuff, it's all over the place. If IT looked at this and didn't have anyone understanding the business impact, oftentimes they'll go and just block them all. And then there's no way for those folks to go and use the thing that they're already allowed to use outside of Teams inside of Teams. As soon as they start looking at it, they either decide on an additive approach, the whitelisting approach, or a deletative, an approach of saying, hey, we're going to allow everything except for the stuff we know we don't want to have. And I've got government organizations in both of these camps.
I believe the official technical term is onesie twosies.
Yeah. Well, the onesie twosie is they'll allow things, but only if forced to. Yeah. The flip side is we'll manage these just like we manage those websites. If you go to arcgis.com, we don't block you from doing that. Why would we block you from doing it inside of Teams? Those organizations are in this scenario where they're like, hey, we would block you from going it. We'll add it to this list. So let me just, for comic relief, say you're like, hey, we can use whatever you want on the store except for Zoom. Right? Can't use that. We're not going to allow it. Okay. And then, the security officer is like, well, what if we need to pull something back? What if it was okay today and we don't want it? Great. Let me know. I can go hit the button and you're like, hey, WebEx was allowed yesterday, but today WebEx is no longer allowed in my organization. Bloop, now they're blocked. It's great to get here, but it's also okay not to start out in this method. If you do have to start out in the allow specific apps and block all others, this is where we would normally start with the stuff you already use in your enterprise today outside of Teams. Why wouldn't you allow it inside of Teams? So this is where we would be like, okay, I know that we use ArcGIS, so we'll get ArcGIS maps allowed. We know that people are using Trello. We know people are using Jira. Bloop. We go and start adding to those lists just to get things started, to prime the pump. And then we do a really good job publishing a process by which a business area that we didn't know they were already using it could go and request it be approved by whoever's going to approve it, and then the technical folks can go and add it to the list. That, like, if you're going to take this process saying we're not going to let people just do what they want to do with it, make sure we document what is approved for everybody. And if you have a need that's not on that list, here's how to go and try to get it on that list and what our criteria will be for evaluating it. Like if you explain why you've locked it down and how people can go and get what they need, they're not going to have that negative reaction to, hey, IT just blocked me. Putting the no in innovation. No, we can give them a clear path to get what they need to go and do their job. So, all right, that leaves us a whole 4 minutes for more questions, thoughts, concerns, things you want to see. Jim wants to see a slide.
Yeah,
I'm happy to.
Yep, that slide you started with. Yep.
I'll throw an image of it in chat. I stole this out of the training deck that we use with any of the Microsoft Teams trainings done from our training hubs. They actually, I think, have a prettier version of it now, but this is the one from from the one that I found quickest when I was trying to pull this up on the fly. So, and if there's more we can give, Jim, just let us know.
I was going to say, I know what everybody's thinking. You saw that YouTube app at the top, and your first thought is, how can I link all of these Cute for Teams sessions into my teams to share them with my colleagues? I know that was your first thought. The only downside to that, you can't do playlists in that YouTube app today, I don't think. So it is great for individual videos out of YouTube, but I haven't yet seen it be able to point to a playlist so that you could just one tab and all the Cute for Teams videos are right there. However, even with that one video, concept, again, give it a try, because they show very nicely, nice big thumbnails and, easy to click. So even if you had to do one specific video, it's a very elegant way to show a YouTube video in this case. So that was just one thing I thought I'd mention about that YouTube app.
Yep, and I see training teams do this all the time. We see the communications folks do this all the time, both for internally to manage their content and surface things, but then more outward facing with the wider audiences, making sure that that's a way that they can consume that content, that video content. Love it. Is there a way to integrate the Cute videos into Stream? There could be, but realize then it's a copy of those videos in your environment, and when we make updates, you wouldn't automatically get those. But yeah, if you really want to have all of those videos in Stream, I bet Ricardo would share the MP4s with you.
Yeah, you would essentially have
for
to
that?
upload them manually. Yeah, but to Nash's point, all the nice updates and organization and all that stuff would be in YouTube. So it would be a lot of manual work for you to kind of keep up. Jim, you have
myself off mute. Yeah, to kind of elaborate on that, and I guess where I was going from with wanting to get a picture of that slide is that you talked about the collaboration and to communicate seamlessly, and that's great internal to the team. But when there are instances like this, when there are people outside of the team, the architecture becomes a little bit problematic in that. And for us, our system of care is such that most of the work happens outside the domain. And it becomes real problematic to try and collaborate and communicate seamlessly in that environment. And we haven't come up with a viable solution yet.
So when you say outside of the domain, what do you mean? You mean you've got people who aren't employees of your organization? Is that what you mean?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's referring to. Across the spectrum of care, they've got, their nonprofits, their other partners in the communities.
What in that scenario, what's the biggest challenge? Because the one I usually hear is file sharing, which there are some, ways to get that done, maybe not as elegantly as we'd like, but what's the biggest challenge you see in that external collaboration with teams?
As much as we try to transition ourselves to be prevention focused, the reality is that we're crisis driven. And when crises are happening with individual kids or families, it's about getting that information and having those conversations in as agile a manner as possible, so that and all too often we have to rely on email. Emails get missed by people. You may not read something, but it may not be the most current information, and tragedies happen as a result of that gap.
Oh, I hear you. Like in the perfect world, the care team is all a member of the team, even if they're not an employee, right? That is a design scenario that exists within teams. That's guest access. And guest access can extend to a bunch of other things. So I don't know if this group has gone through like the Illinois Child Welfare app, but yeah, there's a couple of people who work for the state of Illinois, and then it's a bunch of either contractors or third-party government organizations who are actually delivering the care. And it's everything from foster parents to pediatric psychologists and psychiatrists. Anyone who's associated with that kid's care team, they're part of the team in Teams and using guest access to get in there. and they've got their own custom app that they're doing for all of that child welfare work with Illinois. Now, that's how it's designed to work. If your organization hasn't turned on guest access, then they've chosen to not allow that scenario, and that would be a place where you'd want to make sure you've helped them understand your business needs as a group. You need to be able to communicate and collaborate with people who aren't employees. So yeah, anything we can do to help with those conversations, we'd love to arm you with it. And I know that guest access can be really scary to IT. IT is the one government agency that's least likely to spend its time collaborating with people who don't work for that government agency. Right? They're not spending all of their time working with cities and counties and the federal government and nonprofits, and they're working with either other IT folks or people who work for the government entity itself. So this isn't something where they necessarily automatically see, oh, this is a critical, very critical use case, because it's just not usually part of their daily life. But everything outside of IT, guest access is the lifeblood. So that can take a bigger conversation. That's where your CSMs and your account team can help paint the picture, help address the issues that people feel that could come up. Like, what if, all of the what if questions. Great, here's how you control and mitigate and handle those. I don't know if that really helps you, Jim, but hopefully this is a topic that might be able to get you part of the way there.
It validates the windmills that I've been tilting at. So thank you.
Is that a Don Quixote reference, or?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe guest access scenarios or external collaboration scenarios, that might be a good topic for a future session. As we wrap up, I was also even putting in the post, maybe even hearing more about the Illinois Child Welfare app might be good as well. So we've certainly had some guest speakers on this on in the past. We could probably make that happen. So
yeah,
so hopefully
Debbie's back from her leave next week, I think. So
yeah,
we can ask her.
I was going to reach out to her. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. And we're at time here, so we'll plan to see you again next week, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Bring your friends. Let everybody else know they're missing all this cool chat stuff, and they need to come here live. So glad you had a good one here. I hope we are helpful, and we'll see you next week, everybody.